He called me a local bum at my daughter's wedding. His parents laughed, sipping champagne in a ballroom I could have bought 10 times over. My daughter just looked away. They thought they owned the world. They were about to learn that the ground beneath their feet belonged to me, and I was taking it back. The Grandview Hotel ballroom smelled like money, old money, the kind that whispers and judges. Chandeliers hung overhead like giant frozen explosions of light. Tuxedos and glittering dresses swirled around me. It was opulent, overwhelming, and completely fake. I stood near the back, tugging at the collar of my suit. It was gray, clean, pressed. I'd bought it 5 years ago, the week I buried Mary, my wife. It still fit, but in this room, I felt like a smudge of grease on a polished mirror. I felt small. My name is David. I build houses, solid houses for real families. I spend my days covered in sawdust and sweat. My hands are rough, calloused from decades of swinging a hammer. I don't belong in places like the Grandview, but this was Chloe's wedding, my little girl. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me back up and tell you how a single night shattered everything I thought I knew, and how one sentence brought an empire crashing down. I watched Chloe glide across the marble floor. She was stunning. She had Mary's eyes, bright, alive. My heart squeezed tight in my chest. Mary should have been here. She would have known how to handle this crowd. She would have known how to handle the arrogance dripping from the walls. I just knew how to build the walls. Chloe was laughing, a bright tinkling sound that didn't quite reach her eyes. She stood with her fiancé, Ethan Roberts, and his parents, Robert and Patricia. They looked like they stepped out of a luxury car advertisement. Perfect hair, perfect teeth, an air of superiority that radiated off them like heat. The Roberts family owned half the city, or at least acted like they did. Robert was a real estate tycoon, a man who built skyscrapers, not homes, a man who saw people as assets or obstacles. I was clearly an obstacle. Since Chloe met Ethan a year ago, she had changed. The girl who loved coming to my job sites, who proudly wore my oversized flannel shirts, was gone. Now she talked about country clubs and portfolios. She suggested I needed a style makeover. She was slowly erasing the man who raised her, and I was letting her. I thought it was just a phase. I thought she deserved this life. I was wrong. I didn't realize how much this life was costing her. Until tonight. I took a deep breath, steeled myself. I walked toward them. I wanted to welcome them, even if they made me feel like a stain on their imported carpet. I had to try. For Chloe. Chloe, honey, I said as I approached. Her smile faltered. It was quick. Just a flicker in her eyes. But I saw it. Shame. My own daughter was ashamed of me. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. "Hi, Dad," she said, her voice too bright, too forced. She wouldn't look me in the eye. She kept glancing at Ethan, checking his reaction. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." I turned to Ethan. Tall, slicked back hair, a smirk that seemed permanent. "Ethan." I held out my hand. I waited. He looked at it like it was covered in grime. He hesitated. The pause stretched just long enough to be insulting. His eyes flicked to his mother, Patricia. She gave a tiny, almost invisible shake of her head. Then he shook my hand. Briefly, his grip was limp and cold, like touching a dead fish. David, glad you made it," he said. It sounded less like a greeting and more like a surprise. Like he was shocked I found the entrance. Robert and Patricia just nodded. Patricia was thin and sharp. She looked like she could cut glass with her cheekbones. Her eyes raked over my suit. They lingered on my shoes. Sturdy, comfortable dress shoes, not the polished Italian leather everyone else wore. The judgment was silent, but loud enough to make my neck burn. "Quite the spectacle," I said, trying to find common ground. The air felt thick between us, heavy with unspoken disdain. "We spare no expense for our only son," Patricia said. Her voice was like tinkling ice. She didn't look at me when she spoke. She looked past me, toward the center of the room, toward the important people. "It's important to maintain standards, don't you think, David?" she continued. "Especially in public. One must dress for the occasion." The insult landed softly, but it hit the mark. My suit wasn't good enough. I wasn't good enough. I didn't belong. "We believe in investing in quality, David," Robert boomed. He was a big man, loud, aggressive. He treated life like a negotiation he had already won. He swirled his scotch, the ice clinking loudly in the sudden silence. "Something you might want to consider in your own endeavors. They laughed. A dry, rattling sound. I forced a smile. Today was about Chloe. I let it slide, but I didn't forget it. I stored it away, like a debt waiting to be collected. And the interest was mounting. They turned inward, shutting me out as easily as closing a door. I drifted away, invisible, a ghost haunting my daughter's new life. I found a spot near the bar and ordered a club soda. The bartender looked relieved. I didn't ask for something complicated. I leaned against a pillar, watching the performance. But the real show was about to begin. And I didn't even know I had a starring role. A few minutes later, Ethan joined his groomsmen, near the bar. They were already loud, their faces flushed with expensive liquor. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was just trying to disappear. But their voices carried in the cavernous room. Man, this wedding must have cost a fortune, one guy said, clapping Ethan on the back. Only the best, Ethan laughed, loud and arrogant. My dad says if you're going to do something, do it right. No half measures. And Chloe is stunning, another guy added. He lowered his voice, but not enough. But seriously, Ethan, what's the deal with her dad? I held my breath, waiting for the inevitable, waiting for the pain. He looks like he just crawled out of a ditch. My blood ran cold. I froze. My hand tightened around the glass. The condensation dripped onto my wrist. I focused on the sensation. Anything to keep from reacting. Anything to keep from breaking. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was Ethan's reaction. Ethan turned slightly. He saw me standing there. He knew I could hear him, and he didn't care. That was the cruelty of it. The casual disregard. He wanted me to hear. Oh, him? Ethan smirked. He didn't lower his voice. He raised it. That's just the charity case. Chloe has a good heart, you know. She couldn't exactly ban him. He took a sip of his whiskey, his eyes locked on mine, daring me to react, daring me to make a scene. He wanted me to prove him right. Seriously, look at that suit. It's pathetic. He's nothing more than a local bum. We had to tolerate for the day. He leaned in closer to his friends, but his voice didn't drop. It only got clearer, sharper. Don't worry, Ethan said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. After tonight, he goes back to the gutter where he belongs. They roared with laughter. It was a cruel, mocking sound. It echoed off the marble walls. Local bum. The words hit me like a physical blow. I built my company from nothing. I worked 16-hour days my entire life. I put Chloe through college. I gave her everything. And this entitled punk, who never did a day of real work in his life, dared to call me a bum. The anger was hot and sharp. My hands clenched into fists. I wanted to walk over there. I wanted to break his perfect nose. I wanted to tear down the glittering facade of their perfect world. But then I looked across the room, and what I saw chilled me to the bone. Robert and Patricia were watching. They had heard everything. They weren't trying to stop their son. They were laughing too. Patricia tittered behind her manicured hand, her eyes sparkling with cruel amusement. Robert chuckled, shaking his head as if I were a pathetic joke. They approved. They endorsed it. They weren't just rude. They were cruel, malicious. Then I looked at Chloe. She had seen it. She had heard it. Her face was pale. Her eyes met mine for a fraction of a second. I waited for her to say something, to do something, to defend me, but she didn't move. She just looked away. That silence cut deeper than any insult. That look away was a betrayal that shattered my heart. My own daughter chose them over me. That was the moment something inside me broke. It was a clean snap. Quiet. Final. The years of sacrifice. The subtle insults. The condescending smiles. It all culminated in that one moment. That one phrase. Local bum. I looked at Ethan, this arrogant boy who thought money made him better, and I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had realized a profound truth. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't fight. Not with my fists. I just needed patience and timing. They thought they were the kings and queens of this city. They had no idea the storm they had just invited in. The party resumed. The music swelled, but the air felt colder. I retreated to the shadows, watching, waiting. I felt a presence beside me. It was Mark. Mark was my oldest friend, my lawyer, and the only person in the room who knew the truth about my finances. We grew up together. We knew where the bodies were buried. Mark wore a tuxedo, but he looked just as uncomfortable as I felt. He was always calculating angles, assessing risk. David, Mark said quietly, his eyes scanning the room. You okay? You look like you're about to tear down a wall with your bare hands. I'm fine, Mark, I said, my voice tight. Just admiring the architecture. Mark followed my gaze to the Roberts family. He knew that look in my eye.
What did they do? They called me a local bum, and they laughed at my clothes.
Mark's jaw tightened. He knew my history. He knew what Mary and I had built together. While I focused on the construction business, Mary handled the investments. She was brilliant. She saw the potential in the old industrial district decades ago, back when it was just abandoned warehouses and empty lots. She bought land, a lot of it. We lived frugally, poured every spare penny into acquiring property. We didn't flash our wealth. We drove old cars, wore simple clothes. We focused on building a legacy for Chloe, a legacy based on hard work and integrity, not arrogance and entitlement. After Mary died, I kept the plan going, managing the holdings through a trust Mark set up, the Mary's Vision Trust. We kept it quiet. I loved the smell of sawdust. I loved building something real. I never saw the point in showing off. Mary always said, "True wealth whispers, David. It never shouts." Tonight it seemed I might have to shout. They have no idea who they're messing with, do they? Mark whispered. No, they don't, I replied. The ice in my club soda clinked softly. It was the calm before the storm, and the forecast was looking very, very dark for the Roberts family. Dinner was announced. The crowd surged toward the main dining area. I checked the seating chart, table 14, near the kitchen doors, as far away from the head table as possible. It was a deliberate placement, a calculated insult. They put the help in the back. Mark sat next to me, equally banished. The food was fancy, tiny portions of things I couldn't pronounce. I pushed a piece of fish around my plate. I wasn't hungry. I was focused. I watched Chloe. She sat next to Ethan at the head table, bathed in the spotlight. Her smile was bright but brittle. She looked like a porcelain doll, beautiful, fragile, trapped in a life that wasn't hers. Or maybe it was the life she wanted. Then came the toast. The best man talked about Ethan's brilliance in business. Lies. Ethan was a glorified assistant who played golf most days. Then Robert stood up, microphone in hand, beaming at the crowd. He owned the room, or so he thought. Friends, family, distinguished guests, he boomed, his voice echoing slightly. Today is a celebration. A celebration of love, of family, and most importantly, of the future. He talked about Ethan's future in the family business, Robert's development. And then he started talking about their biggest project yet, the Apex Towers. My ears perked up. This was getting interesting. The Apex Towers will redefine the city's skyline, Robert declared, puffing out his chest. It is the culmination of years of planning, negotiation, and sheer determination. He paused for dramatic effect. The room hung on his every word. We are breaking ground next week, he announced proudly. It is the crowning achievement of my career, located right in the heart of the revitalized industrial district. The crowd applauded. They loved a winner. They loved the smell of money being made. But I smelled something else. Something rotten. We are so happy to welcome Chloe into our family, he continued, spreading his arms wide. She is a beautiful girl, and we will make sure she has the life she deserves. He paused. He looked around the room, then directly at me. His smile was patronizing. It was a snake's smile. The room went quiet, anticipating the next move. We know that not everyone can provide this kind of luxury, he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. He gestured toward me, toward table 14. But rest assured, David, Chloe will be well taken care of. He wasn't finished. He twisted the knife. He wanted everyone to know how superior he was. She won't have to worry about the struggles of the working class ever again. It was a public humiliation, a calculated insult disguised as a compliment. He was saying I was inadequate, that I couldn't provide for my own daughter, that I was beneath them. The room felt hot, the air too thin. My ears rang. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. Mark put a hand on my arm. Easy, David. Breathe. Don't let him bait you. He's trying to make you look bad. I focused on Robert's words about the Apex Towers. I knew about the project. Massive. $1 billion development in the heart of the industrial district. The area Mary had invested in. Robert had bought up almost all the land, bullied the landowners, used his connections. But there was one problem. A problem he hadn't mentioned in his grand speech. A problem that was about to become very, very big. One small crucial piece of land, right in the middle of the development site. Without it, the entire project would collapse. He needed that land desperately. It was the access point for the utilities. The main road. Everything hinged on that one plot, and the owner refused to sell. The owner was the Mary's Vision Trust. The owner was me. Robert had been trying to buy the land for months, offering increasingly large sums, millions of dollars, but he was negotiating with the trust, managed by Mark. He had no idea who the real owner was. He thought he was dealing with a stubborn corporation, not a local bum in a cheap suit. I looked at Mark. He nodded slowly. The realization hit us both at the same time. This was the leverage. This was the timing I had been waiting for. The pieces were clicking into place. Robert had just handed me the weapon I needed to destroy him, and he did it in front of everyone. Mark, the portfolio, I said quietly. It's in my briefcase, in the coat check. I'll get. Mark slipped away unnoticed in the celebration. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for the right moment to spring it. But something happened next that turned my blood to ice. It was time for the father-daughter dance, a moment I had dreamed of since Chloe was born. I stood up, smoothed my suit jacket, ready to dance with my little girl one last time. The band started playing the song Mary and I used to dance to, our song. A slow, sweet melody, a lifetime of memories wrapped in music. My throat tightened. Mary should be here. I took a step toward the dance floor, but before I could reach it, I saw Patricia hurry over to the band leader. Her face was tight with disapproval. I saw her waving her hands, shaking her head, pointing at me. The music stopped abruptly. A screech of the needle across the record. The sudden silence was jarring. The whole room turned to look. We seem to have a small mix-up, the DJ announced smoothly. We will now have the father-daughter dance to a more appropriate selection. A classical waltz started playing. Something cold, formal, something that had nothing to do with me, or Mary, or the life we built. Patricia had changed the song. She hadn't just insulted me. She had stripped away the last piece of Mary from this wedding. It was a petty act of cruelty, a deliberate erasure of our history, a message that my past, my memories, my wife, didn't belong in their world. I looked at Chloe. She looked surprised, confused. But then Ethan whispered something in her ear. She nodded, forced a faint smile. She didn't fight for our song. She didn't fight for me. She didn't fight for her mother's memory. I thought the betrayal at the bar was the worst part. I was wrong. This was much, much worse. This was personal. This was a declaration of war. I walked onto the dance floor. The lights felt too bright, the music too loud. I held my daughter, but she felt like a stranger in my arms. We swayed to the music. The silence between us thick with unspoken words. They changed the song, I said quietly. My voice was steady, but my heart was cracking. It's okay, Dad, she whispered. She didn't meet my eyes. This one is nicer. She paused. More elegant. Nicer. More appropriate. More like them. Less like us. As the dance ended, I realized the truth. This wasn't just about Ethan and his parents being cruel. It was about Chloe being willing to let them. She was choosing their world over mine, and I had lost her. Maybe I lost her a long time ago. I went back to my table. Mark was waiting, a thin leather portfolio in his hand. He looked furious. Changing the song? That's low even for them, he muttered. They have no class, no shame. It doesn't matter, I said. I opened the portfolio. Inside were documents, deeds, contracts. The keys to the kingdom Robert thought was his. I was reviewing the papers when I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Chloe. "Dad, what are you doing?" she asked, her brow furrowed. "You look so serious. Are you okay?" "Just reviewing some work stuff, honey," I said, keeping my voice light. "Dad, please," she whispered, leaning closer. The smell of roses and expensive perfume filled the air. "Don't cause a scene." My head snapped up. "A scene? They've been insulting me all night, Chloe. Did you hear what Ethan called me? Did you see what Patricia did?" I know," she said quickly, looking around nervously. "But this day is so important to me. Ethan's parents are very influential people. We can't afford to make them angry." She paused, biting her lip. Her eyes begged me, "Please just try to fit in. Don't ruin this night for me. Just let it go." It felt like a betrayal, deeper and more painful than anything the Roberts family had done. My own daughter, the little girl I taught to ride a bike, the girl who used to help me in the workshop. She was begging me to accept humiliation, to let it go, to disappear, to be invisible. I looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't my little girl anymore. She was becoming one of them. "I won't cause a scene, Chloe," I said softly, "but I won't be insulted either." She looked confused. But before she could say anything else, Ethan called her back to the head table. She went running. I watched her go, a knot tightening in my stomach. The real betrayal was still waiting in the shadows, and it was darker than I could have imagined. As I sat there, trying to figure out my next move, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned. It was a woman I recognized but hadn't seen in years. Aunt Sarah, Mary's sister. "David," she said, her eyes sharp and intelligent, just like Mary's. She always chewed the inside of her cheek when she was nervous. She was chewing it now. "Sarah, it's good to see you. I wish it were under better circumstances," she whispered, leaning in close. "These Roberts people, I don't trust them, David. Mary would have hated them. They're cold. They're users." I nodded. "They're not exactly warm." "It's more than that, David," Sarah insisted. Her voice was urgent. I overheard Patricia talking earlier near the restrooms. She was bragging about Chloe. She paused, her expression darkening. Her eyes filled with disgust. She called Chloe their little project, said they are refining her, teaching her how to live, erasing the common influence. My stomach tightened, refining her, erasing me. I knew it, but hearing it from someone else made it real, made it painful. They were deliberately destroying my relationship with my daughter. "And there are rumors, David," Sarah continued, looking around to make sure no one was listening. "About their finances. They say Robert's development is drowning in debt, that they've leveraged everything they own, their house, their assets, everything." She grabbed my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "They say this Apex Towers deal is their last hope. They're desperate, David, and desperate people do dangerous things." She looked at Chloe, her eyes filled with sadness. "Be careful, protect Chloe. Shiny things often hide the sharpest edges." Sarah squeezed my arm and disappeared back into the crowd. Her words echoed in my mind. Drowning in debt, last hope, desperate. They weren't just arrogant. They were dangerous, and they had my daughter. I looked at Robert at the head table, laughing loudly, holding court. The mask was firmly in place. But I saw the cracks now. I saw the fear behind the arrogance. I decided to try one last time, to handle this privately. Maybe Robert's desperation would make him reasonable. Maybe I could appeal to his business sense, avoid the explosion that was building inside me. I still wanted to protect Chloe from the fallout. I walked toward the heads table. Robert was surrounded by admirers. "Mr. Roberts, may I have a word with you?" I asked, politely. He looked at me with annoyance, as if a fly had landed on his steak. "David, this is hardly the time or place. I'm celebrating my son's wedding." He turned back to the man next to him. "And finalizing the Apex deal," he added with a smug wink. "It's about the Apex deal," I insisted. My voice was low, firm. He sighed dramatically. He looked at me like I was wasting his precious time. "Very well. Talk to my assistant on Monday. He handles the minor details. He paused, letting the insult hang in the air. He looked me up and down, a sneer playing on his lips. I don't deal with laborers. He turned his back on me, dismissing me like a servant. The men around him chuckled. Laborers, local bum, charity case. I walked away, my resolve hardening. They had left me no choice. They wanted a war. They were about to get one. The gloves were off. I was done playing nice. As I was passing the massive ice sculpture of a swan, Ethan intercepted me. He was drunk now, his eyes glassy, his smirk even more pronounced. He stepped into my path, blocking me. Hey, David, he slurred, leaning in too close. The smell of whiskey washed over me. Still here? I thought you would have left by now. He poked a finger into my chest. Hard. The smell of money getting too much for you, old man. I'm just enjoying the party, Ethan, I said calmly, trying to step around him. He grabbed my arm. His grip was surprisingly strong. No, you listen to me, he sneered. The mask was off. The cruelty was naked now. You're embarrassing Chloe. You're embarrassing my family. He tightened his grip. His face was ugly with contempt. He leaned closer, his voice low and vicious. Go hang out by the kitchen, he ordered. Better yet, go wait by the dumpsters. That's where trash belongs. The urge to tell him the truth, to watch his smug face crumble. It was overwhelming, but the time wasn't right. Not yet. I needed the perfect moment, the maximum impact. I needed everyone to see. I pulled my arm free and walked back to my table. I needed to think. I needed a plan. I needed to make sure they paid for every insult, every humiliation. I looked at Chloe. She was dancing with Ethan, her head on his shoulder. She looked genuinely happy. A pang of guilt hit me. Was I really going to ruin her day? Was my pride worth her happiness? I sat down next to Mark, my heart heavy. Maybe I should just let it go. Endure the humiliation. Let them have their victory. I could sell the land on Monday. I could let them have their apex towers. Maybe Chloe was right. Maybe I should just disappear. Mark leaned over, his expression grave. David, we need to talk, he whispered urgently. I just overheard Robert talking to his lawyer. They're gloating. Gloating about what? I asked, the weariness heavy in my bones. They're having trouble with the holdout landowner, that's us. Mark explained. The bank is threatening to pull the financing if they don't secure the land by Monday. Robert is completely over-leveraged. If this deal fails, he loses everything. Aunt Sarah was right. They were desperate. I looked up. Robert was pacing near the terrace doors, his face tight with anxiety despite his earlier boasting. Patricia was wringing her hands, her icy composure cracking. They weren't kings and queens. They were desperate gamblers on a losing streak. But here's the kicker, David, Mark continued. His voice dropped lower. Robert isn't just trying to buy the land anymore. He paused, making sure I understood the gravity of what he was about to say. He just told his lawyer he's pulling strings at City Hall. He's planning to have the land seized by eminent domain on Monday morning. He's going to steal it from you. The guilt evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. This wasn't about pride anymore. It was about justice. It was about stopping a corrupt man who thought he could steal from me, who thought he could treat people like dirt and get away with it. He wasn't just insulting me. He was actively trying to destroy me, to steal Mary's legacy. He thinks he can steal Mary's legacy, I said. My voice was low, dangerous. He thinks the owner is just some faceless corporation he can bully, Mark said. He has no idea he's messing with the wrong man. The audacity was breathtaking. But I still needed to protect Chloe. I needed to know the truth about Ethan. I needed to know if she was safe with him. I needed some air. I walked toward the terrace doors, near where Robert had been pacing. As I passed the hallway leading to the restrooms, I saw a young woman crying softly. She wore a bridesmaid dress. Are you okay? I asked gently. She looked up, startled. Her makeup was smeared. I'm fine, she sniffled. It's just weddings. She looked familiar. I realized why. I'm David, Chloe's father. Her eyes widened. Oh, I'm Jessica. I used to know Ethan. I remembered the name, Ethan's ex-fiancé. The one he dumped suddenly when he met Chloe, the one who disappeared from the social scene shortly after. I shouldn't be here, Jessica whispered, wiping her tears. Chloe invited me. She said she wanted to show there were no hard feelings. I thought I could handle it, seeing him so happy. He doesn't seem happy, I said. He seems arrogant. Cruel, Jessica laughed bitterly. That's his mask. He's charming when he wants something, but when he gets it, he turns cold. He's manipulative, David. He hurt me. Badly. She looked at me, hurt me. Badly. She looked at me, her eyes filled with genuine concern. Be careful. He's not what he seems. He told me things. About Chloe. My heart stopped. What things? He said he was only marrying her because he thought her family had connections. He could use, Jessica revealed, her voice trembling, and a small inheritance he could control. He said she was naive, easy to manipulate, that he could mold her into the perfect wife. My blood ran cold. He didn't love Chloe. He was using her, just like his father used people, just like Patricia was trying to refine her. They were predators, and my daughter was their prey. He has a pattern, Jessica continued. He finds vulnerable women. He love bombs them. Then he destroys them. I almost lost everything because of him. My career, my sanity, please don't let him do that to Chloe. I thanked Jessica. Her words solidified my resolve. This was no longer just about the land. It was about saving my daughter from a monster. I had to stop this marriage before it destroyed her. I went back to Mark. My mind was racing. We had them on the land deal, but we needed more. We needed to expose the corruption. We needed to burn their empire to the ground. Mark, we need proof, I said. Proof of the eminent domain scheme. Proof of the corruption. We need it now. Mark nodded, his expression grim. I know someone, Mr. Henderson. Remember him, the old man who owned the bakery downtown? I remembered. Robert ruined him years ago, forced him off his land using similar tactics. Bribed city officials to condemn the building. Henderson lost everything. Call him, I said. See if he has anything we can use. Anything that proves Robert's pattern of behavior. Mark stepped away to make the call. I watched the party. The glittering facade felt brittle now, ready to shatter. The music felt distorted. The laughter sounded hollow. If this story is keeping you hooked, drop a like, because what happened next was something no one saw coming. Mark returned, his eyes blazing with righteous anger. Henderson confirmed everything. Robert has been bribing city officials for years. Councilman Davis is in his pocket. He's the one pushing the eminent domain seizure. He paused, holding up his phone, and he has proof. Emails, bank records, proof of the bribes. He's sending them to me now. He's been waiting years for this moment. The pieces were all in place. The leverage, the proof, the motive. But I needed one more thing. I needed a witness. Someone official. Someone who could ensure that Robert paid for his crimes. Mark, we need the police, I said. We need someone honest. I already called him, Mark said, a grim smile playing on his lips. Detective Miller, white-collar crime. He's very interested in Robert's activities. He's on his way. I looked at them, these people who thought they were superior, who mocked my clothes and my livelihood. They were on the brink of collapse. And they didn't even know that the man they had humiliated held their fate in his hands. It was time. The band finished a loud, brassy song. There was a brief lull as the DJ prepared to take over. In that moment of quiet, I picked up the portfolio. And I started walking. I walked calmly, deliberately, from the shadows at the back of the room towards the center of the stage. My footsteps were steady on the polished floor. The sound echoed in the studied quiet. The room started to notice. The chatter died down. Hundreds of faces turned towards me, confused. What was the bride's father doing? Why was he walking to the stage? I climbed the steps. The bright lights blinded me for a second. I walked up to the microphone stand and tapped it gently. The sound boomed through the massive ballroom. Silence, complete and utter silence. I saw the looks on their faces. Robert and Patricia looked annoyed, rolling their eyes. They expected a rambling, embarrassing speech from a sentimental old fool. They were about to disappoint it. Chloe looked mortified. She grabbed Ethan's arm, whispering frantically. Her eyes pleaded with me to stop, but it was too late. The train had left the station, and it was heading straight for them. Ethan looked furious. His face turned red. His jaw clenched. He strode toward the stage, his arrogance leading the charge. "Get down from there, old man!" Ethan yelled, his voice cracking with rage. "The speeches are over." He turned to the side of the stage. "Security! Get this bum off the stage!" A ripple of uncomfortable laughter spread through the crowd, followed by shocked whispers. The insult hung in the air, heavy and ugly. The room held its breath. I looked directly at Ethan, then at Robert and Patricia. I smiled. A slow, genuine smile. The smile of a man holding all the cards. "Good evening, everyone," I spoke clearly. My voice firm and steady, cutting through the silence like a knife. I know it's customary for the father of the bride to give a toast. I wasn't planning on saying anything. I paused, letting the anticipation build. But after listening to Mr. Robert's inspiring speech about the future, about the Apex Towers, I felt compelled to share a few words. Robert was glaring at me, his face tight with anger. He still didn't understand. He still thought he was in control. He was wrong. "Mr. Roberts, you talked a lot about success, about legacy, about building something monumental." I couldn't agree more. In my line of work, construction, you learn a lot about foundations. I looked around the room, at the glittering chandeliers, the expensive flowers, the smug faces of the elite. If the foundation is weak, the whole building collapses. It doesn't matter how expensive the decorations are. If the foundation is rotten, it all comes crashing down. I locked eyes with Robert. "And your foundation, Robert, is rotten." The room gasped. The tension skyrocketed. The air crackled with electricity. Robert started walking toward the stage, his face red with fury. "How dare you!" he bellowed. "Get off the stage, David. You're embarrassing yourself." He tried to dismiss me one last time. "You know nothing about my business." "I know more than you think, Robert," I said, my voice still calm. "I know about the bank threatening to pull your financing." Robert stopped walking. His eyes widened. "I know about your desperation to secure that last piece of land in the industrial district." His face turned pale. "And I know about your plan to steal it using eminent domain on Monday." I continued. My voice gained strength. It echoed in the silent ballroom. "I know about the bribes to Councilman Davis. I know about the corruption. Mr. Henderson sends his regards." Robert froze. He knew I knew. The realization hit him like a physical blow. His secret was out. His corruption exposed. The blood drained from his face. He looked like a ghost. "I just wanted to address the comment my new son-in-law made earlier tonight. He called me a local bum." I looked at Ethan. His face was now ashen with apprehension. The bully realized he had picked the wrong target. "I just wanted to say one sentence about that." I leaned into the microphone. I took a deep breath. I looked directly at Robert. His eyes were bulging with rage and confusion and dawning horror. "Mr. Roberts, about that crucial plot of land you need for your Apex Towers, the one your entire company is depending on." I paused for the final blow, the one that would shatter their world. "I'm afraid the local bum has decided not to sell." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a vacuum, sucking all the air out of the room, the sound of an empire collapsing. The impact was immediate, visceral. Robert's face didn't just turn pale, it turned gray. The color drained from his cheeks. His eyes widened in horror. He stumbled back, clutching his chest, as the realization hit him like a ton of bricks. He finally understood who the holdout owner was. He understood that his plan to steal the land was now impossible. He understood that he was ruined. Patricia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, her face ashen. She swayed and then fainted, collapsing onto the floor in a heap of expensive silk. The Ice Queen melted under the heat of the truth. Ethan looked confused for a moment, then horrified. As the implications of my words sank in, he looked at his father, then at me. his smug smirk replaced by a look of sheer panic. The golden boy realized his future had just evaporated. The crowd murmured, confused and shocked. They didn't understand the details, but they understood the shift in power. They weren't looking at a local bum anymore. They were looking at the most powerful man in the room. I held up the deed to the land. The leather portfolio open for everyone to see. "The Mary's Vision Trust," I announced, my voice echoing in the vast ballroom, "named after my late wife, the woman whose legacy you tried to steal." "Isn't me?" I looked at Robert, broken and defeated. "You built your empire on sand, Robert," I said, "and the tide is coming in." Robert rushed toward the stage, his panic overriding his pride. He was desperate, broken, the facade shattered. "David, wait," he begged, his voice trembling, tears streaming down his face. In front of everyone, the mask of the tycoon was gone, replaced by a pathetic, groveling man. "We can make a deal," he pleaded. "Name your price. Anything you want. Please, don't do this." He reached the edge of the stage, looking up at me with desperate eyes. He fell to his knees. "You'll ruin me," he cried. He was groveling, pathetic, his arrogance replaced by desperation. The king had been dethroned, and I had done it with one sentence. Just then I saw Detective Miller enter the ballroom, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. He nodded at me. The timing was perfect. I calmly closed the portfolio and walked off the stage. The ballroom descended into chaos. The music stopped. The celebration ended. The guests were whispering excitedly, realizing they had witnessed a spectacular downfall. I found Chloe standing alone near the exit. She was crying, tears streaming down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. She looked at me, her eyes filled with shame, anger, and confusion. "Dad, how could you?" she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "You ruined my wedding. You ruined everything." "How could I stand up for myself, Chloe?" I asked gently. "How could I let them treat me like dirt? How could I let them steal your mother's legacy?" I paused, remembering Jessica's words. The painful truth she needed to hear. He didn't love you, honey. He was using you for money, for connections. He called you naive, easy to manipulate. Chloe gasped, her eyes waiting in shock. The realization hit her hard. "They were my family," she cried, her voice breaking. "They promised me everything. I am your family, Chloe," I said, putting my hands on her shoulders. "I always have been. I always will be." I looked into her eyes, searching for the girl I knew. They insulted me. They humiliated me. They called me a local bum. They laughed at my clothes. They changed your mother's song. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. "And you let them?" I said softly. "You were ashamed of me." She looked down. Unable to meet my eyes, the truth was painful, but necessary. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered. "I didn't know. I didn't understand. I was so caught up in their world. I was so stupid." "I know you didn't," I said, my voice heavy with sadness. "I tried to protect you from the burden of wealth, but instead I made you vulnerable to people like them, people who value money over integrity." Ethan rushed over, his face desperate, his perfect hair now disheveled. "Chloe, baby, please," he begged. "We can fix this. Tell your father to reconsider. We can offer him anything. We can—" Chloe looked at him. She saw the desperation in his eyes, the arrogance replaced by fear. She saw the man he truly was, a coward, a bully, a user, a fraud. "Go away, Ethan," she said, her voice clear and cold. "It's over." He stared at her, stunned. He had underestimated her, just like he had underestimated me. I took Chloe's hand and led her out of the ballroom, leaving the chaos, the tears, and the shattered illusions behind. Mark joined us, small, sad smile on his face. The night was over, but the future was just beginning. Weeks later, the fallout was complete. The Apex Towers project collapsed. Robert couldn't secure the land. His attempt to use eminent domain backfired spectacularly when the story of the wedding leaked to the press. Mark made sure of that. The public turned on him. The corruption was exposed. Mr. Henderson's proof was damning. He testified against Robert, providing the evidence of the bribes and the long history of corruption. Councilman Davis was arrested. Detective Miller launched a full investigation. Robert was facing charges of fraud and bribery. He was facing years in prison. The bank pulled the financing. Robert's development went bankrupt. Their empire crumbled. They lost everything. The mansion, the cars, their social status. They were ruined, publicly humiliated, exposed as frauds and bullies. The local bum had taken down the tycoon. Chloe filed for an annulment. It was messy. Ethan tried to fight it. But Jessica's testimony about his manipulative behavior and his true motives sealed the deal. Chloe realized she didn't want a life built on lies and arrogance. She had seen the true character of the man she married, and the true strength of the father she had ignored. It was a difficult time. We had a lot of healing to do. A lot of broken trust to repair. We talked. We argued. We cried. But slowly, we started to reconnect. We started to rebuild, brick by brick. One afternoon, months later, I was back in my workshop. The smell of sawdust filling the air. I was sanding a piece of oak, the rhythmic motion soothing my soul. I loved this place. It was real. It was honest. The bell above the workshop door jingled. I looked up. It was Chloe. She was dressed in jeans and one of my old flannel shirts. Her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked more like my little girl than she had in years. She looked like Mary. "Hi, Dad," she said softly. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, smiling. A real smile, the first one in a long time. She walked over and picked up a piece of sandpaper, joining me at the workbench. "I was wrong, Dad," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I was so wrong about everything, about them, about you." She looked up at me, her eyes clear and bright. Mary's eyes. "I forgot what really mattered," she admitted. "I forgot where I came from." "We all make mistakes, Chloe," I said gently. "The important thing is that we learn from them, and that we build something stronger from the wreckage." We worked side by side, in the comfortable silence of the workshop. We weren't just rebuilding a piece of furniture. We were rebuilding our family, a foundation built on honesty, love, and respect. I looked down at my worn work boots, covered in dust and concrete. They were sturdy, reliable, honest, just like me. I never wanted the money. I never cared about the power. I just wanted respect. And I wanted my daughter to understand that true wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the quiet strength of a man who knows his worth, and the solidity of a foundation built on integrity. Thanks for listening. Please rate our story in the comments. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot, because your time matters.